Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we're going to have a great episode with John Stallone. Before we get to that episode, I want to remind you that Western Hunter magazine is doing their $1,500 Swarovski credit, and that they've been gathering email addresses, and at the end of this month, they're going to have their drawing for the $1,500 credit towards any Swarovski product. All you have to do is go to westernhunter.net/JScott. That's all one word, lowercase, J Scott, JAYSCOTT. Enter your email address and you'll be entered into the drawing to win the $1,500 Swarovski credit. I want to thank you guys, my listeners, for all your avid support, and I really appreciate all the feedback that I get through my email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com, all the comments on my Instagram, Facebook, and phone calls and text messages that I get. I'm going to do my best to keep the content of this podcast great and push through this summer as we're moving into the 2016 fall hunting season. So I just thank you for all the support. Make sure to follow along on our Instagram and make sure to check out our YouTube channel at J. Scott Outdoors and then J. Scott Outdoors YouTube channel. I want to thank GoHunt.com Insider for their title sponsorship of this podcast. They've been with me since the beginning. I would also like to thank the Outdoorsman's, Wilderness Athlete, Elk Hunter, and Western Hunter magazines, Utah Hydrographics, and Phone Scope. Make sure throughout this podcast you'll hear commercials from these different companies, and make sure you use the J. Scott promo code to receive the discounts from these fine companies and support them. I get a lot of feedback from my sponsors with all the support that you guys do give them, and it's greatly appreciated. You'll find these companies are the best companies in the world. So, guys, let's get right to this episode with John Stallone. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have John Stallone, and John is actually from Arizona, or lives in Arizona, not too far from me. I have not actually met John face to face, but I'm anxious to have John on the podcast today. John, how you doing?
I'm great, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. John, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction on yourself and your background in hunting and that sort of thing?
Do you want the short version or the long version? Because we could put your listeners to sleep if you want.
I'll take either.
No, but seriously, I've been doing this for a long time, and I wear a lot of hats, and I'm involved in a lot of different aspects of hunting, and got my hand in a bunch of different companies and stuff. So I started hunting at a very, very young age, probably about 5 years old is what my dad tells me, and I got some pictures of me with my dad at that age. And I've pretty much hunted every year since, and I've been doing it professionally for the last 16, 17 years or so.
Where are you from, John?
Originally from Brooklyn, believe it or not. So, but I've been living in Scottsdale since 1991. So, I've lived here longer than I lived there.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I'm a father of three, a husband. I'm the marketing director for the Hunting Channel Online. I'm the digital marketing manager for the OutdoorInsiders.com. I'm national shooting staff for several different companies. I've written for a number of different publications. I've authored a few books. I'm a certified wildlife manager, filmmaker, amateur bowyer, and of course I have my TV show, Days in the Wild.
Awesome. And do you got any hunts that you're looking forward to that you've drawn, or what do you have on your agenda here for the fall coming up?
So far on the books, I'm going to start off in California in July for blacktail. Then I may do a little Arizona black bear here in August. Then I have an archery mule deer tag in Utah, so that too will be in August, early season. And then beginning part of September, I'll be in Wyoming hunting muleys and antelope. and mid to late September be in Montana hunting elk. And then I'll be in New York in October for whitetail. I come back here to Arizona. I have that late season archery tag, a 5B tag, which should be interesting. I'm not even quite sure why I put in for it, but I put in for it.
Archery elk or archery
deer?
deer?
Archery elk.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I got that late archery bull. I actually had that tag, not the 5B. I had 7 East in 2011, and I got one. But it was a tough hunt. And I don't know, 7 East is a little easier to glass, I think. 5B, I haven't been in 5B in a long time. I shot my first 3 cows in 5B North, during early season many moons ago. But I can't remember. I haven't been in that unit in a long time. I really can't remember where the glassing is and where to even start. So I got to get out there and do some scouting for sure. But and then
John, what brought you from New York to Arizona?
My dad just wanted to seek a better quality of life for us. The cost of living in New York was ridiculous. Things are just not going as well. That time, although things have kind of changed a little bit over there, I think the quality of life's a little bit better now, but just cost of living is ridiculous. I mean, we were paying then in 91, $7,000 a year in property tax. And, over here, if we paid, $1,500 or $3,000 maybe. And that's now, so,
yeah.
Stuff like that, just to get us out of the city. Well, and actually, at the time, I lived in Long Island, so I lived in the suburbs. But
how old were you when you moved from the Bronx?
Or from I was
Brooklyn. You said.
Yeah, I was just about to turn 16. So I came here when I was in high school. Went to Saguaro in Scottsdale. Yeah. So.
Gotcha. So you're a saber cat.
Yep. I am.
Right on. Did you then where did you go to college after your high school?
Well, I did my undergrad at Grand Canyon University. I studied to become a physical therapist, and then I did that for a little bit, and got back into the family business, which is construction. And then somewhere along the line, I went back and got my master's from Colorado State University in rangeland management and ecology.
Interesting. Did you know that I went to Grand Canyon for 3 years?
No, I didn't know that.
I was there in 92, 93, 94.
So basically the 3 years before I got there, as I got there in 94. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of a small world. I didn't know that about you.
That's funny.
I didn't know you
lived in
Scottsdale.
Big now. It's crazy big now, that school. It used to be a little school, real private and real intimate. Now it's just like one of the biggest universities. It's giant. So.
I went to a concert, a Christian music concert with my wife, and we've actually gone to several. And obviously it's not new, but it's new to me. The new I don't know what you call it, arena or auditorium or where they play basketball. It's amazing to think that little school. I mean, I can remember going to some classes in like modular,
yep.
literally like mobile classrooms,
like trailers, exactly.
Like trailers, and some of the old brick buildings, and it's just, I guess we're aging ourselves, but it's great to see how far they've come down there in building that campus out. And I think Jerry Colangelo has had a lot. I think he's been involved with that school, and
he spoke
a lot
at
of
my
other
graduation.
people. Yeah. So that's a small world, and I live in Scottsdale 9 months out of the year, and I thought you lived in Chandler or Gilbert, and sounds like you live in Scottsdale. So the next crazy thing is we're probably going to find out we live in the same subdivision.
We're pretty close, I think. Pretty close, I think. So, and I've been living over here in the same area pretty much since I moved here. Not too far from my parents' house.
Gotcha. And you hunt, what would you say you primarily hunt? Like if you had to rope yourself into one category, what would you say you are?
I really can't. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I cut my teeth on whitetail. I mean, I was probably for the longest time most known for whitetail hunting, but I've been a Western game hunter since I moved out here in '91, so for 25 years or whatever. And I hunt everything. I don't have one specific thing that I love more than the next. I mean, I guess if somebody put a gun to my head and said you got to pick one, I'd probably pick elk, but just because they're, the grandness of it all, and the bugling and the whole nine. But I mean, I hunt muleys, I hunt whitetail, I hunted an ibex last year, I hunted Barbary sheep. I mean, I go everywhere. And I think that's kind of what my claim to fame is, that I'm jack of all trades. You kind of throw me anywhere and I'll figure it out and make it happen somehow.
How did you, well, first of all, my wife always laughs when people ask me the question because she'll just say whatever season it is. So it sounds like we have that in common.
Yep, that's me.
How was the transition for you? Obviously, when you're 16 and you moved to Arizona, but having started hunting when you were 5, how was that learning curve going from what I would say is, hunting in New York and lots of timber and, dark timber and a lot of green to as open as it was? Did you have a fairly steep learning curve, or tell me about kind of some of your first hunts and some of your first thoughts coming out west?
So, I mean, pretty much most of my hunting has been self-taught. Even though my family, my dad and my uncles hunted, coming from back east, the idea of hunting is put on a red jumpsuit, sit underneath a tree and wait for a deer to come by. Not even sit in a tree. So we didn't even use tree stands, so coming out here, I guess probably the first 8 or 9 years, I still hunted. I just walked slowly and stopped and looked, walked slowly, stopped and looked. And, I had some success, and it was a little frustrating for me because I didn't get the whole glassing and stalking thing until probably I was in my early 20s, I'd say, or mid 20s. I was fortunate enough to meet a couple of good friends of mine now, Doug and Howard Spicer, who live in Tucson, and they kind of taught me how to hunt coues deer. They took me coues deer hunting for the first time, and that's kind of where I picked up the whole, glass and stalk game. And actually, I got even luckier because I had one of the best hunters the best western hunters in the country. Dwayne Adams kind of took me underneath his wing. I don't know, in my late 20s, and for 3 years he took me hunting and taught me how to glass better and how to be better. I've always kind of been a student, so I kind of pick up whatever I can wherever I go. I've always kind of surrounded myself with people who know better than me, so that I could become better.
What is it, in your opinion, about coues deer hunting? And you mentioned guys taking you coues deer hunting. In my opinion, guys that learn how to coues deer hunt effectively and efficiently can pretty much go hunt anything around the world. And
I agree.
Some of the best hunters that I know are coues deer hunters.
I agree.
What do you think it is about that lets me form my opinion and your opinion that are similar?
Well, besides the fact that the coues are a very worthy adversary, so to speak, they're a very tough animal, very cagey, very elusive, hard to find. It really incorporates all the major tactics that you need to be successful everywhere else. You need to be, really good at glassing. You need to be great at picking a spot and planning a route for the stalk. You need to be sneaky. You need to, it has all those components that make up a guy that's successful everywhere. And Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tell people all the time because I travel all over the place in North America, and I'll match a really good Arizona coues deer hunter against pretty much anybody, and they'll be able to go toe to toe with them because it's just that that type of hunt that draws that out of you. You have to be all these things for you to be consistently good, especially with the bow. You know, I've had the opportunity to take a few with my bow. Rifle hunting's a little different. I mean, you still have to find them. You still have to, there's still that all involved. But, if you could shoot 500-600 yards, they're not terribly hard to get close to at that range. But, but you shorten that up under 100 yards, you're looking for one of the biggest challenges, I think. So,
I think one of the things that makes it the biggest challenge is the actual terrain, the actual dirt that you're walking on, and the soil, and the fact that it's loud. Everything about it is loud, and those deer are so wary, and they're so used to lions sneaking up on them, and they're always on alert. I think for me, one of the things that makes coues deer hunters in my book a little bit special is the fact that sometimes those deer can be right in the middle of your field of view at 500 yards, and you look away for a second, get something out of your pack, and basically just put your eyes back in your binos, and you're thinking they're gone. And you think, well, maybe they bedded down, and you keep staring, and all of a sudden you just see an ear flick, and they're standing there motionless, and they're standing there the whole time. And so I think it makes hunters, guys that hunt coues deer, I think it makes them more aware, and a little more keen, just on trying to be detail oriented and trying to slow down a lot of times and be precise, for sure.
Absolutely.
John, what would you say, if you had to put your hunting in a percentage box, X a percentage is rifle hunting, X percentage archery, what would you say on a personal level? How does that rate with you?
Well, in the last few years, I've been doing a little bit more rifle hunting. I've kind of refound the love for it. But it's still probably 90% archery, 10% rifle. And in years past, it was pretty much all I loathed the rifle for a while. I kind of refound a passion for it. I've started enjoying it again, mainly because I kind of hunt. I kind of bow hunt with my rifle now. I still try to slip in, within 100 yards or so to make it happen.
Yeah,
I do that every time. I shot a Barbary 585 in February, so I don't do it all the time, but when I can, I do. So.
Yeah, let's take a quick break here.
GoHunt.com Insider is by far the most valuable tool a Western hunter could give themselves. GoHunt.com Insider are the industry leaders and #1 source for Western hunting for a lot of reasons. GoHunt.com Insider have changed the game for how hunts and hunting information are found. Within a matter of minutes using Filtering 2.0, you'll be able to filter by state, species, residency, odds of drawing a tag, specific hunting dates, and harvest success percentages to find the hunts that fit exactly what you're looking for. If you are a guy that applies across the West or just in your home state but want to find some new opportunity, there's no better way to do it than using GoHunt.com Insider. As an exclusive offer to my listeners, if you sign up for a GoHunt.com Insider membership for $149 a year and use the promo code JScott at checkout, you'll receive a $50 KUIU gift card. Head on over to GoHunt.com/insider and get yourself the most valuable membership a hunter could have.
What's interesting, John? Dara and I have done some hunting with our friend Randy Ulmer, and he kind of gives me a hard time at times because he says, you're a rifle hunter, but you're a bow hunter at heart. And I kind of take that as a compliment, because I do rifle hunt, I do archery hunt. I'll hunt with whatever, my tag or whatever the season calls for.
Right.
But I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to, hearing that, you kind of chuckled, being a rifle hunter, but being a bow hunter at heart, or thinking like a bow hunter. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I got a good story that kind of fits with you. So I was hunting with a buddy of mine who is primarily almost 100% a rifle hunter. And we were sitting, and he was helping me glass, and we found a buck, a coues buck, and down south. And we were sitting on this buck at 440 yards waiting for him to stand up, and it was getting cold. I had shed off all my clothing, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, I'm getting like, because I know if I had a bow in my hand, I'd be going up the hill. He's bedded down. I'm going to go sneak up on him, bed it down, and I'm going to go try to shoot him, And, I'm just having this conversation. He's like, oh, just relax. He's going to stand up. And you know what? I'm like, dude, I'm going. I put the ear set in my head, and I ran up the hill, snuck over the top, got within 100 yards of him, and shot him. He happened just to stand up out of his bed right when I got there. But, I would have shot him right in his bed. And it's part of that's a little bit of impatience, but for me, I mean, I see the opportunity through the bow hunter's eyes. I don't see it like, so for me, I was like, oh, that's perfect scenario. He's sitting underneath a ledge. I could come over the top of that rock and draw down on him and shoot him, And I just think you plan everything, you look at everything differently, than you do as a rifle hunter. I don't know. That's the best way I can describe it. It's just you see things differently. You look at the terrain differently, as opposed to I don't know. I shouldn't say that because I don't want to take anything away.
No, but I know what you mean. I mean, I think it's one of those things that when you do hunt with a bow and you have to get much closer, you tend to take and break everything down as far as, not just trying to get, 350 or 400 yards away and being able to shoot across a canyon. You're now planning your route, planning your attack, planning your stalk, figuring which way, the wind's going, figuring, how do I need to approach this? And I think if guys that just hunt with the rifle can, and let's say they want to get better at their craft.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they can take that bow hunting mentality and try and take all of those, and not that rifle hunters don't, but some don't. I mean, let's face it.
Right.
I've hunted, you've hunted with guys that, they just don't take any of that into consideration. But guys that want to get better at what they do, in my mind, have to be more aware of their surroundings. And I think bow hunters are very aware of their surroundings because they have no chance unless, they get inside that 100 or 50 or 30 or whatever distance that, that they're comfortable with. So, I think a tip that I give a lot of people at times is, to try and take all the variables, not just there's an animal, let's go.
Yeah.
Try and plan out, okay, where might that animal bed? Okay, where might he, if he beds, where is he going to, which way is he going to go when he gets up to start feeding? Mm-hmm. Where are the does or where are the cows? Where are the places where this animal, if he does, notice that I'm there or catch me, where's his escape route? And, I think that could make, if people take more of that into consideration, I think it just make them that much better of a hunter.
For sure. Absolutely.
John, as a archer, what kind of equipment are you using and why?
Well, I mean, I've been shooting Matthews for forever. Let me do this. I'm going to tell you the why and not give you a list of what equipment I use. Everything I use, every sponsor I have is something that I believe in. I do things differently than most. you'll find in this industry, to make money, you kind of got to be like willing to sell your soul and be a walking billboard. I know too many guys that flip from company to company just because they're following the money. And, you know, as a business, you kind of have to do it that way. But I've never done that. And in my eyes, there's nobody who pays me enough to be at a deficit on the mountain. So I'm not going to use a product that's going to hurt my hunting. So, you know, everything that I use, I kind of used them first, found that I liked them, and then went after them and said, hey, you know, show me the money, or, you know, can I be on your pro staff, or whatever. But if it's important to the listeners to see what my gear list is, you could go to my outdoorinsiders.com page and check out my gear lists, or, you know, go to johnstallone.com and check out my sponsor page. But, you know, my main guys are Matthews, Gold Tip, and Schwacker as far as the archery bow setup. But, you know, I use Saguaros for binos, and, you know, a bunch of different other products and companies out there that I work with. But
how many pounds do you pull on your bow?
Most of my bows are 70. I do have an 80-pound Matthews Wake, but I kind of...
What was that for? What were you using that for?
Well, I was hoping to go buffalo hunting last year, and it didn't pan out. But I did. I took it with me to South Dakota on my mule deer hunt. Excuse me, because knowing that South Dakota, we'd be hunting the Badlands, and it's kind of meets up with open prairie, and it's kind of longer shots, and I just wanted to, you know, stack the odds in my favor and have a faster, heavier bow with, you know, a little bit better range and whatever. And but I ended up taking a whitetail on that trip. I went there specifically to get a mule deer and couldn't find one that was older than 3 years old. It was just miserable, and I kept seeing good whitetail, you know, occupying the same terrain. And we caught one following the trail of some does that we saw going down to a creek bottom, and we made a 3-mile sprint to cut him off, and I shot him at 90 yards with that bow. It was a fun hunt, but I was disappointed that I didn't get a mule deer once again.
Yeah.
So,
when it comes to accuracy or speed, what's your opinion on that topic as far as archery, and where do you fall in line with the way you shoot or the equipment that you shoot? Curious your take on that.
I'll take accuracy and shootability over speed any day. And I'm not going to mention the company. I'm not bashing anybody, but there's companies out there that are just hell-bent on speed. And you go and shoot the bow, it's just not forgiving. It's not, you know, it doesn't go exactly where you want it to go. And I mean, there's exceptions to the rules. There's guys, I know one of the greatest shooters in the world actually shoots that company. But, you know, for me, it's all about shot placement and accuracy, and I'd rather have a much better shooting bow than it be super fast. I mean, I like speed too. Everybody likes speed, but, you know, speed helps you in yardage, and it helps you, you know, if you've ever been a 3D shooter and stuff like that, which, you know, calculates down to hunting as well, judging yardage when you don't have the chance to pull out your rangefinder or whatever. You know, it's nice to have speed. You get less ducking of arrows with speed, but it's not the end all. I think well-rounded bows are more desirable than single-sided.
For someone out there that's just getting into archery, what advice do you give them as far as trying to pick out a hunting bow that's going to work for them? And let's say that this person, you know, is getting into archery, but not someone that's, you know, going to shoot 3D all the time and, you know, shoot every day, but just someone that's just going to get into the sport of archery and hunt with that, maybe hunt some deer, hunt some elk with their bow. What advice do you give them?
My advice is, if you got the money for a Pinto, but you really want to buy the Ferrari, eventually you're going to find out that you're going to want to buy the Ferrari, and you're going to go through the Pinto, the Ford, the Mercedes, the BMW, and then you're going to get to the Ferrari anyway. Is save your money until you can spend the best, because I mean, really, equipment nowadays, you get what you pay for. I mean, I look at it in optics, I look at it in arrows, and look at it in bows and rifles. If you buy a $200 box bow, yeah, it'll shoot well for you. It'll shoot, hell, it's going to be a lot better than the bows I started out with in the 80s. But if you get into it and you really like it, you're going to want to buy it, and you just spent $300 on, So it might just be smarter just to step back, set a goal, save your money, and then buy the best of what you can buy within your means, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's good advice. John, you do a lot of out-of-state hunts, and you do a lot of DIY hunts. Would you consider yourself strictly DIY, or where do you fall in that category?
No, I'm not strictly do-it-yourselfer. I do go here and there. Guided. I have a lot of friends who are guides throughout the nation. I've done a lot of marketing and stuff like that for companies, and met a lot of people. So for the most part, I would say I'm 90% do-it-yourself. But there's every once in a while I get invited to go on a guided hunt, or at least a private land, or semi-guided type deal. I know a lot of guys out there just kind of like look down their nose at guided hunts and all that stuff. But I mean, I think it's a great thing. I think if you're gonna, especially whether you're a seasoned hunter or not, but if you're going to a new area, I think it's a great idea to hire a guy like yourself and just and learn from somebody who knows better than you, and have a good experience, and just take it for what it is. And then maybe next time try it on your own. I did that a lot in my early years. I'd go on a guided hunt, and I'd learn, not necessarily learn the area or learn the the unit or whatever, but I would learn their tactics, and then I'd come back a year later and go to a different spot because I never wanted to trample on on their areas, and and just apply those tactics and stuff. So it just makes you a better hunter. But I do take satisfaction, and I do like to do things on my own when I can. Yeah.
I always struggle, being a guide and an outfitter myself, and doing a lot of hunts that I've done over the years, doing a lot of hunts on my own. I struggle a lot with the term DIY in a lot of different aspects. One of the aspects is, how often do you ever go on a hunt where you never talk to anybody, you never do any calling any local biologist, any Forest Service, anybody, where you just show up in an area, you know nothing about it, and you go hunt? If people are honest with themselves, the reality is they are probably not just going to show up cold turkey.
No.
Maybe there's some out there, and my hat's off to them, but then comes the term do it yourself. Well, maybe you didn't actually hire a guide and an outfitter to haul you around in the woods and, cook for you and do all the different things that guides do.
Mm-hmm.
But you talk to everybody under the sun, and you've basically done all your homework. Well, in my mind, that's not technically do it yourself. I think it's going unguided.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
we could go on and on and on about it. But sometimes it bothers me a little bit, being a guide and outfitter and knowing a lot of guides like you do, all over the nation, who live and breathe this stuff. And I think sometimes guides and outfitters get a bad rap, and I think there's a whole crowd out there that's I'm DIY exclusive, and I want to kind of want to say, guys, we're all hunters. There's no reason to get fragmented, and I think a lot of times if people's pocketbook, I mean, when it really comes down to it, I think, and we're really all being honest, I think a lot of it comes down to guys' pocketbook. I think if you have more resources, I think you're gonna buy trespass fees, and you're gonna hire guides and outfitters, and if you don't have a big pocketbook, or you don't place a lot of value on going guided, then I think, without getting into it too much, I just think there's a little bit of hypocrisy out there.
Oh yeah.
With guys say, "Oh, I'm all DIY." Well, either you don't place enough value in going to a new area and not being able to scout and being able to hire a guide who knows all the trails, knows all the access points, knows how to get around on the mountain. So anyway, I was just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to shake people sometimes. I just want to grab them and shake them because of all the hunter on hunter hate out there, about do-it-yourselfers, about the trad guys versus the compound guys, the rifle guys versus the archery guys. It's kind of, it kind of falls into that same deal there. It really drives me nuts because if we were a unified group, like our adversaries, like the antis, we'd be a lot better off. But we fight with each other so much about stupid things. Who shoots this bow, who shoots that bow, who wears this camo. It's really ridiculous. And it's the same thing with this do-it-yourself hunter versus the guy who goes guided or semi-guided or who asks for help. It's the whole do-it-yourself thing it's all ego. In my opinion, I think it goes back to why I think people don't, even though they know they need help, they don't want to ask for help. And I don't know. That we could spend 2 hours talking about that. You want to get me started?
For sure. Let's take a quick break here.
I have known the owners of the Outdoorsmans in Phoenix for over 20 years. They are the authority on optics and hunting gear. Outdoorsmans is the leading designer and manufacturer of high-quality tripods, mounting accessories, and pack systems for all hunters. Their customer service is the best in the business. Go to outdoorsmans.com or call 1-800-291-8065 and use the J. Scott promo code to receive 10% off any Outdoorsmans products.
John, when you're talking about going on an out-of-state hunt, I'm curious as far as your preparation, if you could give me some tips on how you prepare yourself mentally and physically for those out-of-state hunts. And I know the fear of the unknown to a lot of people can be crippling, and I was curious how you prepare on these out-of-state hunts that you're going on, or quite honestly, out-of-state or in-state, just hunts you're going on. I'm curious how to pick your brain on see how you prepare for that.
Well, you said about the fear of the unknown. I'm going to start with that, and then I'll kind of circle back and give you, some of the things that I do. For me, I think the fear of the unknown is part of the fun of the adventure. I kind of call myself an experienced hunter. I'm not a trophy hunter. I'm not a meat hunter. I'm out there for the experience of it. So win, lose, or draw, I'm out there to experience the hunt. And I think that's enriched my hunting experience. And once I stop putting that pressure on myself to harvest an animal, that my hunting has gotten better. I've been more successful. I've enjoyed myself more. But I just want to get that aside. So like actual, preparation, I do a lot of what I'll call cyber scouting. And I don't mean, putting posts on Facebook and asking people where to go. I use Google Earth. I look for bedding. I look for feeding, travel corridors. I look for, landscape features that would hold, game. There's an endless amount of tools on the internet now. I use moon phase charts and stuff like that. I kind of try to plan my hunts with moon phase, especially the early season hunts.
Okay, so let's talk about, let me interrupt you here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
How do you look at the moon phase? What determines what dates you decide to go, or is there a time when you don't want to be in the field if you have a choice, if your season is liberal enough, long enough that you can choose? What kind of cycle do you want? What kind of cycle do you not want?
Well, it depends on the game. And it depends on the time of year more than anything. If we're talking rut hunts, I'm looking for, half moon or less. If we're talking early season hunts, I try to avoid the full moon at all costs, because if it's a really hot, arid environment, you tend to, at least in my experience, I tend to see more or shortened amount of diurnal or daytime activity. You will see sometimes in the midday, you'll see a little bit of activity. They'll get up in the midday when there's a full moon or the moon is underfoot. But, again, that's probably something we could probably talk about for hours. But I would say most important, I try to avoid full moons pretty much all the time. And not that
I do too, by the way.
Not that
I do too.
Not that it's, you can't harvest something with the full moon, because I have, and, there's sometimes you can't avoid it. I'm going this July, I'm going to, during the full moon for my blacktail hunt. And I'm sure it's going to be hot, and I'm sure it's going to affect some of my hunting, but you can still get it done. It's just not as good during the full moon. So, it's always something I take a look at. When I was doing a lot of whitetail hunts, I used to keep notes about moon, and I used to keep notes about barometer and all that stuff. I've gotten a little lazy, and I can't recall on that information without going to look at it, but I used to know it like in the back of my head, what made deer get up and move and so on and so forth. But I still look at those things, and I'll go back and I'll look at my notes, and I'll be like, all right, this makes sense. Let's do this day, or just do that day. And, I'll wake up in the morning and see what the weather's doing, and, come up with a game plan based on that. But, as far as planning in advance, there's only so many things you could predict and so far out. So, but moon is one of them. So I always take a look at the moon. There's resources like, Go Hunt, like, one of your title sponsors there. They got great resources to figure out, plan trips and so on and so forth. The Hunting Channel Online, if you're a member of that, you have the Hunting Resource Center, and there's, weather patterns, there's moon phase charts, there's, all kinds of stuff and videos and tips and tactics and, trying to help you plan your hunt and make it, so that you're more successful. I try to take any resource that I have. I'll call biologists. I'll get a hold of the game warden in that unit, and pick his brain. Anything I could do to stack the odds in my favor, I'm going to. So.
And as far as preparing mentally, preparing physically, what are you doing a lot of times?
Well, so I mentioned earlier when I went to Grand Canyon, I studied to become, a physical therapist. So I did a lot of sports-specific training, and I've incorporated that into my regiment, into my training, for archery specifically. Not as much in the rifle shooting, but I've developed like drills and stuff that I use, and I'm going to back up a little bit here. I'm going to tell you basically what I do is I practice for the game. So if I'm going elk hunting, I know my shots are going to be from the ground. I'm probably going to be sitting on my butt or kneeling behind a tree. Chances are you could be shooting uphill or downhill. And I take those things and I try to mimic the most lifelike scenarios for the game that I'm going to hunt, and I practice that way. If I know I'm going tree stand hunting, I try to, go find a tree, which is not really easy in Arizona, or not in Scottsdale anyway, and go throw up a tree stand, and I practice from a tree stand. And if I know I'm shooting antelope, I practice laying on my back and pop, drawing full draw and pop up from, a laid down position, and all the things that I know that I'm going to have to do to make it happen. I build drills. So like last year, before my ibex hunt, I got myself a 3D ibex target, and I went and shot tons and tons of steep uphill, downhill, rocky, crazy stuff. And I don't just practice a shot; I practice stalking into position and shooting, because mechanics change. When you're crawling on the ground and you try to, draw from a concealed position and pop up and shoot. It's not the same as you standing in front of a, 4x4 target 40 yards on a range. It's just.
You bring up a great point there of shooting uphill and shooting downhill. And when you were shooting at your ibex target, for those people out there that maybe aren't as experienced with shooting at angles, what did you notice mainly, John?
Well, I've kind of always I caught on to the angle thing shooting at a tree stand long ago. So most people tend to drop their arm to make the pin go where they want it to instead of bending at the waist. And when you're shooting downhill, or uphill for that matter, you need to bend at the waist and still keep the top part of your body as a T, the archer's T. Because if you drop your arm or raise your arm, your anchor point actually changes and you'll hit either higher or lower than you're really aiming. So that's. And
as far as the arrow flight, shooting uphill or shooting downhill, how does the arrow perform?
I never really noticed any difference as far as performance of the arrow itself. And nowadays, what everybody's got angle compensated, rangefinders and so on and so forth. But before I had an angle, compensating rangefinder, it was difficult judging what you needed to, hold your pin at, because the deer would be 30 yards away or whatever, and in actuality, or 30 yards line of sight, but in actuality, it was only 15 or 10 yards. I had a mule deer buck in Wyoming back in it was 2011, I think, or 2012, and my line of sight was 85 yards, and I'm like, all right, I can make this shot, and I shot for 85 yards, and this is with an angle compensating. I didn't know that it didn't compensate past 80 yards. It was an older model. I shot 5 feet over him, So then I did it the old school way. I took the angle and I did the cosine and everything, and my holdover was for 25. So, yeah, those are things that you don't know if you don't practice them or been out in the field. That could have been, and thank God it wasn't it wasn't the trophy of my life. It was a, 130-inch 3x, it wasn't, I wasn't too broke up over it, but if it was a 200-inch muley or something like that, I might have turned the bow on myself that day. But, so.
Well, and I think too, shooting uphill and downhill, your arrow's going to fly high, and I don't think people understand that or realize that. And like you said, if you practice for the situational practice, knowing, at steep downhill angles, at steep uphill angles, your arrow is going to fly high. And I think that's important to practice that and realize what's going to happen. And, with the angle compensated rangefinders, it makes it a lot easier. But
it's still not an exact science, because
that's right.
Yeah, shooting, especially shooting uphill. So shooting downhill, the arrow's picking up speed. But shooting uphill, the arrow's losing speed. So within 50 yards or whatever, yeah, it's not going to make a difference. But if you're trying to make, 60, 70-yard shot, your arrow is going to lose speed shooting upwards. So even though you're like, and I don't know the exact math, and a lot of these, angle compensating do have the math, algorithm in them, and it does figure it out for you, that even though it's 33 yards, you got to shoot for 36 yards or whatever. And the line of sight's 40 yards and the holdovers 30, it actually will figure it out. It's not exact difference between shooting down is not the same as shooting up, basically, when you're talking about, well, even with a rifle, but rifles, you have to be a lot further to make it, make a difference because of the speed. So
let's take a quick break here.
Have you guys heard about PhoneScope? PhoneScope is a privately held company that makes custom-molded, precisely engineered smartphone digiscoping adapters. Photographing wildlife has never been easier. Take digiscoping photos and videos from your smartphone and share them with your friends. PhoneScope stands behind their product with a 100% money-back guarantee. PhoneScope is the future of digiscoping. Get yours now. Use the JScott16 promo code and receive 10% discount on all purchases. Check them out at PhoneScope, that's PhoneSkope.com, or on Instagram at PhoneScope. Wilderness Athlete is committed to improving the health and quality of life for the outdoor athlete by providing field-tested, scientifically validated nutrition and sports performance products. Check them out at wildernessathlete.com and use the JScott promo code to receive 10% off any order.
John, what are some of if you had to pick a story or pick a situation where, one of the biggest mistakes you made on a hunt, what was it? How did you learn from it? And how has it made you a better hunter, from blowing a stock or missing a shot or whatever mistake you're about to tell me?
Mm-hmm.
I want to get a takeaway from it.
I don't know if I have one specific mistake of the millions that I've made in my hunting career. I think what's important is to take note of any and all mistakes that you make and store them so that when you're faced with that similar situation, you have something to pull from, to help you make the right decision. I've been faced with this before, I've seen that before. I think that's what makes one hunter better than another, is the ability to recognize that they've been in this similar situation before and how to react to it. I tell people all the time, you need to be a student of the craft and always learn something, be sponge, absorb, like we were talking about earlier. I guess to circle back and answer the question, I'm thinking of an example. I was hunting in the Pine Barrens in Long Island for whitetail, and I decided to do a rattling sequence, and I kind of did it half-assed. And in my head, I remember saying to myself, "Oh, this isn't working," and I kind of hung up the horns, and I was messing around. Like I didn't even look to see if a deer was coming in. I was messing around in my bag and stuff just because I mentally gave up. And I lost focus. I let my guard down, and 2 seconds later, I look underneath the stand, and there's a big 8-point just stepped out of the brush, staring right up at me because I was fiddling around with crap in my bag instead of being in the moment and following through what I was doing. So I guess following through, I've had this too, like spot and stalk. I remember one of my first big coues bucks that I ever put a stalk on. I fell going up the ridge, and I said to myself, "Oh, he's not going to be there anymore." You had to hear that. I knocked a bunch of rocks, and so I kind of half-heartedly walked to the top, and I looked over, and sure enough, he was still there, staring right up at me. And if I had followed through with that, and snuck up to the top, I may have gotten a shot at him, and that would have been my biggest That would have been my biggest coues buck period, because I have still yet to shoot one over 100 even with my rifle. And he was probably 115, pushing 120.
I think that's a great point. I mean, I've seen similar situations in my own hunts and similar situations in guided hunts where, something happens and you think mentally that the game is over. And I would, from listening to your story, I can totally relate. And I would say that I've had same situations where if I would have been still engaged in the game and acting as if that buck was still right there, until I know for a fact that he's not right there, then your chances of being able to get in position and make the shot. But we've all done it where we think we've blown the stock, and then all of a sudden, the buck gets up and comes back over the ridge and gives you a second chance. I can remember this last coues season in Mexico, we had a big buck, and shot was taken, and the buck jumped up, and we, there were several of us watching from different positions, and no one could really tell exactly if the buck was hit. And fortunately, Hunter Haynes was guiding with us, and was able to stay in position with the hunter. Obviously reload the rifle and be ready. And the buck went over the top of the ridge. Well, I was at a different vantage point up higher, and Dar was actually on the back side of the ridge, and Dar's talking to me on the radio and saying, this buck he's coming back. You're going to get a second chance. And I mean, you would think you shoot at a deer and he runs off and goes out of sight, that there's no way he's coming back. Well, he had does that were bedded down below him. He didn't know, how many times have you heard a rifle shot and you have no idea where it came from? You don't even know which direction it came from. That's right. The same way when a deer gets shot at. A lot of times they just know they're going to run away, but he had reason to come back, and sure enough came back over the ridge, and the hunter was able to make a great shot on the deer and kill him. But that's just one example. I think another example for me is there's been many times when I've taken my eye off of an animal, whether it's a coues deer, a mule deer, an elk, and fiddle farted around and take my eyes off it, whether, I've learned the hard way that if you ever take your eyes off an animal, likelihood is they're going to get up and move in that split second when you're, running over to your pack, or, you got to get up to take a leak, or even if you're just getting lazy. So Dar and I, we talk to our hunters constantly about keep your eye on the animal, period. Do not take your eye off, even if a buck goes into a thicket and bedded down. One of the things that I've learned in hunting with Dar so much is I know that if I'm stalking a buck, that Dar is watching. It doesn't matter if it's 100 degrees out, if the wind's blowing, or if it's super cold, or if it's raining, or whatever. He's watching. And if you can keep your eye on the animal at all times, or have a spotter, your chances of efficiency, your chances of being able to get in position and get a shot at whatever it is, go way up. I see so many people that'll bed a buck down in the morning and they'll go, oh, we're going to go back for lunch and we'll come back in the afternoon. I mean, that rarely happens.
Yeah. No, not me.
Stay on the buck. Don't take your eyes off it. Keep your eye on that bedded bull. And let your shooter get in position. Even if you're not using radios, you're not using communication, at least you can leapfrog over to your buddy once he gets over into, say, a shootable position, and you can get down to him, because while you're moving, he's already got the buck. And if you never leave your eyes wandering off of that animal you're after, your chances of harvesting go way up.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It's good to have good hunting partners, but unfortunately that's not always the case. But I agree with you. It's just I've never put anything to bed. I very rarely put things to bed and even wait them out. When I put things to bed, I usually make a move on them, assuming that the wind and everything is right. But
Sure.
You know.
Let's take a quick break here.
Utah Hydrographics is in the water transfer printing service, and they are open to whatever you can dream up. Choose from a wide range of camo patterns, designs, and colors. Whether it's guns, bows, tools, rifle stocks, vehicles, steering wheels, fenders, dashboards, paint guns, fishing rods, cups, tripods, watches, knife grips, helmets for a local sports team or for your motorcycle, picture frames, mailbox, animal skulls, you name it, they can probably do it. Utah Hydrographics loves taking things that are general looking and turns them into something that looks fantastic and eye-popping. Give them a call and see what they can do for you and receive up to a 10% discount by using the JScott16 promo code. Visit them at utahhydrographics.com or on Instagram at Utah Hydrographics. Whether you are interested in elk, deer, antelope, bighorn sheep, or moose, Western Hunter and Elk Hunter magazines will bring the adventure to your mailbox. These publications feature articles on the finest hunting gear, tips and tactics from experienced hunters, field judging trophies, glassing techniques, calling strategies, and much more. To become a more knowledgeable and skilled hunter, subscribe today. Go to westernhunter.net/jscott and enter your email address for a chance to win a $1,500 credit towards any Swarovski product.
John, I'm curious about that ibex hunt you mentioned. I assume that was over in New Mexico, and was that an archery ibex?
Yes. Yes, it was.
And how was the outcome of the hunt? Did you get one?
I did.
Nice.
I did.
That's a low percentage success.
Yeah.
How many days did you put in, and how did it end up shaking out?
I got him on day 7. And, well, we released our film, so if anybody wants to go see it, you can see it at thehuntingfilmfestival.com, and that'll tell the whole story, but I'll give you the shortened version. We were in them every day. One of my good friends, Dennis Kaufman, and his partner Tim Barclow, they own Kiowa Hunting Services, and they helped me out. He's actually the one who told me about the ibex, and they got me interested in ibex many moons ago. I'll back up here and tell you the whole story. I was hunting. I drew a tag in New Mexico for muzzleloader elk. And I was hunting by myself. Nobody came with me, and I was having a miserable trip. Didn't hear a bugle for 2 days. The first 2 days I was there, I was only there for 3 days. I couldn't spend much more time there. Third morning, I made some adjustments, looked on some maps, and moved into a different area. And I got on some elk, heard some elk, and started moving towards bugles. And got within 200 yards, and I hear boom, and no more bugling. So I'm like, oh, geez, somebody just shot the bull that I was chasing. So I got in there, and there was a gentleman with a youth hunter and standing over the bull that, the bugles that I was chasing. So I went down and introduced myself to him. And turns out it was this gentleman, Dennis, and him and the youth hunter were, quite a ways from the truck. So I ended up helping them pack out the elk. And in return, he's like, John, if you ever need any help, I'm actually a guide. You ever draw another tag in New Mexico, I'll help you out. Well, I hadn't drawn another tag in New Mexico in 10 years until I drew this ibex tag. So he helped me out with that a lot. They helped me out with that a lot. They helped me out with some spotters, and first couple of days they showed me around the mountain a little bit, and I probably couldn't have done it if I didn't have that. It's a super, super tough hunt. But back to the ibex itself, on the 6th day I had shot another ibex in the face. There was 5 of them laying on top of each other in a crack, and I snuck under a ledge below them, and I drew back and stepped back from the wall, and they all busted out like hornets out of a hornet's nest. And I had one of my John is the awesomest archer moments fly through my head, and shot him on the run, and shot him in the face. and I was devastated. We searched till 10 o'clock or something that night and couldn't find him. We picked up the trail, and the next morning, and we looked for him until like, I don't know, 4 o'clock or something. And I had just given up. We had just given up on looking and finding him. You know, we just chalked it up to he, you know, crawled into a hole and died, or he's fine. I don't, you know, who knows. We, you know, my cameraman actually that was down below radioed up and said, hey, there's a, you know, a billy working its way to the north end of the mountain, you know, almost at the same level that you guys are, and not too far from where you shot the billy the other day. So we kind of made a plan and got in front of him, and, you know, he came down this rock face in front of me at 75 yards, and I got a through and through. I had a little scare at first because the arrow went through, and he busted off the broadhead with his opposite side leg, and sheared it off, and the arrow popped out, and I was like, oh my God, did I hit him square in the shoulder and, you know, got poor penetration. But, you know, he didn't go, I don't know, as the crow flies, probably 70, 80 yards. When we got there, I figured it out that I shot him all the way through, and he just broke the arrow off, and it was a good shot. But I was actually crying inside, thinking I wounded another one.
And you got him?
Yeah, got him. He's number 11 SEI.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I've heard that's just an unbelievable experience over there.
It's the best. I'm actually planning on going for Spanish ibex this year as well. I haven't solidified it yet, but I'm more than likely that's going to happen. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been great to have you on the podcast here. And do you have any concluding thoughts for me or any questions for me?
Concluding thoughts. I'm just going to, a message out to anybody who's listening. You know, we talked a lot about, you know, spending time learning the game you're hunting, preparing. You know, a smart man learns from his mistakes. A wise man learns from other people's mistakes. So don't let your ego get in the way. Ask questions. Try to soak up as much knowledge as you can from those who know better than you. You know, I've shot a lot of animals in my life, and I still, you know, will go hat in hand to somebody and ask for advice if I think they know better than me. So, yeah, that's it pretty much.
You know, I think that's a great point. And quite honestly, I'm curious about your thoughts on this. I mean, I learn stuff from people, whether it's hunting, whether it's fishing, whether it's life, business, what have you. I learn stuff from people that sometimes don't have as much experience as me, but I still learn something from them. And I think some of the most successful people out there, some of them are totally into doing their own thing. They don't want to ask advice. They don't want to take advice, and they're going to, you know, do it their way. And that's one way to do it. And then there's a whole nother group of people out there that are willing to, like you say, set their ego aside and be able to listen and be able to ask questions and figure out that, you know, maybe someone that's only been hunting for 10 years can teach someone that's been hunting for 30 years, you know, something. And, you know, I think that's the great thing about our sports of hunting and fishing, is that, you know, everybody brings something to the table, and everybody comes from different backgrounds. Everybody has different experiences, and, you know, there's lots of things to learn. And, you know, you bring up a great point. The second that you stop learning, you know, you're gonna end up getting tired of the sport. In my mind, you know, if I'm not learning and I'm not, you know, figuring new things out, you know, the passion for whatever it is that I'm doing kind of just goes away.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it's been awesome having you on. And so what's your first hunt? You've got a blacktail hunt in July, and then you've got some elk hunts and some deer hunts coming up.
Yeah, it'll be a pretty busy season. I I mean, I have to make 12 shows a year, so I typically do 12, sometimes 13 hunts.
Where is your show? Where can people watch your show?
A number of places, all online. You can watch it on the huntingchannelonline.com, Carbon TV, and now you'll be able to watch it on the outdoorinsiders.com as well. And it's Days in the Wild, so if you go to any of those, just do search Days in the Wild, and you'll catch the show.
Awesome, buddy. Well, I appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us, and people can also go to your website, johnstallone.com, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And I appreciate you spending time with us, and I look forward to talking to you again, and good luck on your hunts. And one of these days we're going to have to bump into each other living in the same city.
I hang out with Dar all the time at the archery club.
Yeah, so we're going to have to hook up, and sounds good.
Yeah, well, maybe you should hook up with me right about November 4th to November 10th in 5B.
Well, I'm afraid I might be mule deer hunting at that time. But
just giving you a hard time.
Hopefully, I'm going to draw an Arizona strip tag, but we'll see. So,
nice.
Take care, buddy.
All right, take it easy.